Hey Jacob, thank you so much for showing up.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was I'm looking forward to this a lot.
Awesome. Well, I've been really intrigued with all of the content that you put out. Your experience is quite extensive. The kind of companies that you've worked with are like not only big, but also have bigger teams, right? Like to manage and work with bigger content operations overall. And following you on LinkedIn, I've really picked up some of the key elements that I wanted to dive deeper into. So I think this is amazing. I'm finally getting a chance to have a catch up.
Yeah, definitely. Let's
Shall we
let's do it. Let's
just?
jump right in.
Sure, let's go. Well, okay, so I want to start with understanding with just picking your brain on your experience working with different sizes of companies. So like for those who don't know, Jacob has been working with companies like G2, Scribe, ActiveCampaign currently, and for most part in the leadership positions, right, in terms of content marketing. And for these kind of companies, it's just a different game. There are bigger teams collaborating together, and there's a lot of cross-departmental collaboration involved. So what I'm interested in is that knowing that you've worked at Scribe with a small team of content marketers, both in-house and freelancers, and now working with ActiveCampaign, managing relatively bigger team. How is your experience different for you, um, especially as a marketing leader? If you just think of your day to day, how you spend your day, for example, with a smaller team versus with a really big team like ActiveCampaign, where you're dealing with different languages and different regions, etc. What factors do you feel distinguish?
Yeah, really good question. And so I think those three SaaS companies that you've talked about, G2, I actually started as a individual contributor when we were 30 people, and I left with a team of 22 people, and the company's 450. Scribe, I was maybe hired 25 or 30, something like that, and was never more than 40 people. So I had one employee and a bunch of freelancers, as you mentioned. And then here at ActiveCampaign, I came in and, we're 800, 900 people, somewhere in that range. And the team is 8, 10 people, depending on a month, and there's been turnover, whatever, but still it's 10 people. But the company itself is much bigger. And so, I've been at relatively similar stages, though G2 coming from individual contributor, even though you're managing a big team, I'm in lower meetings. I'm at the manager level. I'm not at that director level. So budget's different. Even working with other parts of marketing was a different factor. Scribe, there weren't even like that many teams or people to talk to. So you're very much like just go get stuff done. And then, coming into ActiveCampaign, I have a bunch of mini teams, but then I'm also, at this director level, having conversations with other parts of marketing, but also sales, also product, also design. Like there's so many other parts of the business too that are stakeholders. And so to your point, at Scribe, I was that first content hire. I did hire someone, I think, in the first 3 or 4 months I was there, but generally it was like build a plan, then let's go do the plan. So very in the weeds. I'm going to pick the keywords. I'm going to, project the traffic. I'm going to go find the freelancers. I'm going to email directly with those freelancers. I get somebody to pay it. Every step of the process was me. And we brought in Lauren, who's a superstar, and she handled a ton of the operations. And was a really great editor and really great at brand voice. So then I kind of like lifted out of the words and the punctuation and things like that, and she took over some there. And then she very thankfully like built out a super system for working with freelancers. So she was doing a ton there, and I got to step back and more strategy and how it connected to things like our TikTok strategy and other pieces, but was still very much in the day to day, getting things published, doing a lot of like individual link building and stuff. I come into ActiveCampaign again, three small teams myself, a bunch of other stakeholders, and I've had to like change my mindset really quickly. Some of it was like I still am doing link building that I probably shouldn't spend my time doing, and it ends up falling into my weird hours watching TV before I go to bed. Like I have to answer that link builder. I haven't didn't have time to because I'm thinking about budget much differently. I'm trying to map like 4 team strategies rather than just one. And so, yeah, it's more meetings. Certainly, it's definitely just getting the most out of my existing teams. I think the other the piece that's also haven't mentioned yet. It's like Scribe was a Series A company that even skipped its seed round. It just went seed and A all at once. So there was like 8 employees, then there were 40, and there was no content when I came in. There's maybe 10 blog posts from one agency that we hired for 2 months or something. There was obviously like a marketing site, but not a ton. But I didn't have to do much reworking. It was all green grass. I could go do anything that I believed in. There was no optimization. There was no pruning. It was just going forward. And even with a small team, that freedom to go is very freeing. Here at ActiveCampaign, it's a site with tens of thousands of pages. I don't know, 4 different leaders have done different blog strategies. We've worked with multiple agencies that have had their own strategies. There's even been turnover in marketing leadership, company leadership. So there's just lots of different directions. So just understanding the company direction, all that's been done in the past and where we have to go, that's a whole different thing. So we've spent more time pruning, fixing website speed, doing those things that I never had to think about at Scribe because it was just built from the get-go. It's just a more complex system. So it's a lot of fixing rather than going forward, though I try to do a little bit of both, obviously, at all times.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I think like a lot of people, when they think of, leadership positions for content marketing folks or any position in the world, perhaps, they think the core job gets eradicated as soon as you're in the leadership positions, because now you have to collaborate with other departments and, communicate with the leadership and those kind of things. Would you say you're doing like very less content marketing now, because now you have to do like fill the shoes for other stuff, like budgeting you mentioned, for example, other stuff? How right now in your day to day, what percentage of it is actual like content operations dealing, and what percentage is like other stuff like business stuff, budgets, those kind of things?
Yeah, great question. Again, there's some that I probably even should cut out on the content side, but it's a third of the content. Even the strategy of content, I think we have a lot of talent on the team, but get aligned on those pieces and ensure. But operations, like I've set up the systems, I think I oversee and influence those certainly, but who's doing the day-to-day of the blog tracking and that's definitely I've pushed that down to the team a little bit. And we've luckily got good people here for operations too. Things like it's fit with the team we have. I think the existing team and even some of the folks we've hired, really great content creators, but have thought less about the tracking and analytics. And we've had some systems change as well, so it's not all just on their experience. But so I've taken that on myself too. How do we build those dashboards and projections and things, and then try to bring that down to the team and let them self-serve. So there were operations when I came in, and that's another thing, is like you're taking old Asana boards, you're taking spreadsheets that don't make sense, or you wouldn't do that way. And you're trying to not overhaul everything at once, but kind of improve over time or let it run as is and build a new system on the side that you can implement. And so it's been a mix. I've done both here to different successes, and I don't know which you have to do it case by case, but to the original question, it's probably like a third content marketing. I do some optimizations when I see them. I definitely fill in when something immediate comes up and I want to help. Certainly, I'm always looking at other folks' content, whether that's our competitors or even just good content places, keeping your eye for this is a new strategy, or even should we add this to our comparison pages or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely way more of thinking at that higher level. What are we doing, not next week, but next month or next quarter or even next year? And then how do we project that? How do we find the budget? What stakeholders do we have to get on board? It's a lot more of that stuff, probably 2/3 that.
So one thing that you mentioned, which is very interesting, is that in ActiveCampaign, you've joined and now you're trying to build upon what already existed or making modifications to the existing systems and operations, right? Now, when I think of any person that is in a leadership role, like a director level role for content marketing, there are just like 2 routes where you can get there, right? Like normally in a standard way. One could be that you were the first hire for the company, and then you progressively, worked your way up. You hired a team, and you became, a manager first, and then later on, when you had multiple team leads, etc., you became a director, looking after everything. In your case, it's different. And this is also, a common practice, which is that you joined ActiveCampaign when there was an existing team, established processes, and you had to still play a role in optimizing them further and hitting the goals, etc. In a scenario like this, uh, what are your biggest priorities? Like when you think of your first 60, 90-day plan, when you know that there are already been going to be, SOPs in the way that people do stuff, how do you think about, reviewing everything and finding the gaps that you want to fill on priority?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's even stuff I've learned just from this experience, like coming in with one plan per se, and then even like I would go back and do some stuff differently. But with this big of a team, this many people, that like all those processes, coming in and trying to soak in as much of that as possible, also understanding the product and other teams. I think that's part of the size of this org. It wasn't just me understanding who are the 10 people on my team, but then also these other leaders, I need to know what they're doing. I need to know how content fits into what they're doing or where it doesn't and could fit in. So it's a mix. And, for me, it was looking at what exists. So we're doing blog posts. We do have a lot of organic traffic. Like, I'm sure there's some things about interlinking or headers that I would change in our SOP, but are those small details going to matter when we have a 90 DR and we're already winning some of this stuff? Or is it going to matter more, where we're spending 40 hours a month on something that's not getting a ton of value? So me trying to understand the biggest pieces of time right away and understanding what the impact will be, like where they originated, certainly, and then what the impact might be. I just remember one of the kind of the organic side of the house, really telling with the people, but had like 10 different projects that they wanted to do in the first quarter. And because there was only 2 people working on this stuff, like we got to the end of the quarter, it was only in my first month, and most stuff was still open. It hadn't been finished. It was like tons of ideas, but there wasn't enough bandwidth to go. So to me, it was, okay, stop doing 7 of these. Let's really trim down and focus so we can get something out the door and finished, so we can start testing and measuring that. So it was like just cutting down. I don't know that every company would be that way. Sometimes you would have to completely overhaul. No, we have to stop doing this. So for me, it was just pausing, or reprioritizing. But then again, going to other teams and hearing where content comes in, where do content requests come from? I think historically content sometimes had been like a service org here, and we wanted to turn it into more of a demand generation idea. So trying to have those conversations to reframe that, showing people like a lot of kind of measuring myself, but also understanding how long does all this content take? Where is this coming from? And showing people with all these requests, with all this coming in, here's how much time is already being spent. So we have a big team, but we can't do anything else. So we want to go grow. This doesn't exist. So it was like getting all of that data all very quickly and then showing people so we can trim what wasn't necessary. The last thing I'll say is like, this is a mistake I made at Scribe. I let some things like become artificial blockers that I just needed to power through until the CEO was like, nothing's happened yet. It's been 60 days or 90 days or whatever. We really pushed forward, but it was a learning for me of, you do need to get points on the board. Just analyzing and building a plan is fine, but you're not proving enough in that first 90 days. So it was carving out time and saying, let's go do this new project, this new set of content really fast. And so we had a bunch of traction like on our glossary pages. I don't know that it's the highest impact thing that we'll ever do, but we just use AI to write a bunch of those, published about 100 of them in a month. It's like, look, we'd only published 10 pieces the last 3 months total. We just did 100. It's a big number. There's some optics to that, certainly. But look, there's 100. We did that in 1 month. We changed some operations. We changed the mindset. We're going to go fast. And so something like that, you have to know your org and know where there's traction, all those things. But we said, let's go get some points. And that's paying off right now. Like that traffic has doubled since we've done that. It's gone very well. So getting points up was pretty important to the first 90 days.
And you mentioned there's a lot of, team or leadership buy-in that you have to collect, right? And then make a case for anything with data, etc. So with the size of the team varying, I assume that more decision makers would be involved, with more cross-departmental collaboration expected, and getting leadership buy-in would be a bigger challenge, right? Like working at ActiveCampaign versus a company like Scribe with a relatively smaller team. Has that ever been a challenge for you, like getting leadership buy-in or getting multiple stakeholders on the same page? And if yes, how were you able to navigate that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, everywhere I've gone, even it's easier and easier every stop when you have more experience, when you have, for me, one of the easiest ways is this library of LinkedIn content I have now that can show off results and things, and people, there's the trust that comes in. But even at Scribe, they were investing in me, a more senior first content person than a lot of companies would hire. They're saying, we're going to trust you with a bunch of budget. And that's to that lesson I learned is I hadn't put points on the board. I let things kind of drag a little bit longer than they should have. I was like waiting for other teams when I should have shoved my way through and made, our content website a priority. And so that even at Scribe, small team, not many people believed in me. There were still question marks. When will this happen? Is it going to be as big as he promises? Whatever. And so that first like 6 months, like 3 months of not enough publishing, and then the next three we publish and we're waiting. There's certainly skepticism. There's certainly a lot of calls like, when is this happening? How do we go faster? But the second the graph turned up at Scribe, the second we saw the traffic, the second those signups started coming in, we get that first paid sign up. We get to celebrate that in Slack. That was one of the big learnings for me of like how important internal marketing was and some of those optics. And so that happened, and immediately the pressure kind of came down when we had those things. And then on the other side of that buy-in was like, I remember being at this on-site, it's more like 7-8 months in. Not only has this started, but it's really accelerating. It's going faster and faster every month. We were even able to like feel fairly confident that if we published a piece of content, we would see enough revenue from the content aggregate that in 7 or 8 months it would break even. We show that data to the CEO. We're on a walk in San Francisco. I tell her all this. She's excited, obviously, but even more so when she hears the potential. She just says, why don't we go do more? So we 4x the budget overnight. We went from 25 pieces of content to 100 pieces of content a month, literally like that. And it just happened because, we're in person. I think that makes things easier, whatever, but I had the buy-in. I showed the numbers. It was truly about getting that. Much different here. ActiveCampaign, again, more senior. They can even see these case studies. So there's more of a belief coming in. But then you still have skepticism. And there's even just ways things were done. I remember my third week or something, someone on another team asked me to just copy edit a piece, and they're like, well, the previous leader used to edit everything. And I was like, well, that's not how I want to do this. And so you have to like retrain the brain, like, why do we not want to do this? Not that this piece of content doesn't matter, not that I can't edit this really well, but how should this time be used? And that kind of goes back to that idea of like showing people how much is asked of content, how long this stuff takes, really building out that, like, if we do this, we can't do that. That was really helpful. But then still here, there's proof with numbers. It's very math driven for me. It's also gone the other way of trying to hold back requests or show why maybe that's not the right request or we're spending too much time as because people, again, came to us, one content, we're used to that, and we were saying no often, where I think that was like a harsh thing. And so really being data driven. Okay, let's go look at the last 5 of these blogs that we've done. Well, they don't really generate much traffic, or they're not doing anything for trials or ARR. So when we spend 10 hours or 20 hours producing that, and there's nothing on the other side, there's the ROI is just really bad here. And so using data wherever I could to back it up. If I didn't have that data, we would often say yes tentatively, explain that we want to make sure we're seeing the distribution and we're seeing the engagement, traffic, et cetera. And so often we would do one and then maybe pause that program. And so conceding that maybe the strategy isn't what I want to do, but I want to go prove that it's not working before I say no to everything. So probably a little bit of a tangent there, but those are the things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So if I were to summarize this, you would say that it's more about just presenting to your leadership what they care about. So instead of like talking about input metrics, maybe just talk about what the content can deliver, etc. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's different metrics at different stages. So in my second month at Scribe, we're paying an agency $10,000 for 5 articles, $2,000 a blog. In my second month, I can go say, well, I've got all these freelancers. I'm actually able to do 25 articles for the same cost. That is actually really powerful. That's just input. We haven't done anything yet, but my CEO is like, great, that sounds like a good use of budget. So input actually matters a ton there. My month 3 or 4, when I haven't published enough content or there's no traction because it's taken too long to get off the ground, then she cares about where was the publishing, where's now the traffic. And then like okay, so we published, we don't have traffic yet, but we have keywords. Like that's a good indicator that can show it. But 6 months down the road, the CEO does not care about keywords. They do not care about rankings. Even the traffic is like, where's my signups or where's my revenue or where's my trials, whatever your metric is. So your metrics will evolve there, but you're certainly looking to tell a story that is compelling and also tell the story that they do care about, right? So you're looking for those, the ways of analysis and also the metrics that they care about. I think you summarized well, but yeah, here too, I think, yeah, certainly it's all about those metrics that people care about, but especially when saying no, it's like showing them the why and really being data driven to that. Um, totally.
Yeah, no, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love the way that you thought of, budgeting and the money going into creating, for example, one piece of content as an input metric and how relevant it would be, right? So, yeah, like that totally changes the frame. Um, okay, so moving into the content strategy bit, I, wanted to pose this question to you, and perhaps for anyone listening who runs a small team or in early stage startup can benefit. I really want to ask you, like maybe get some free consulting advice. So this is more from, if you put yourself in the shoes of a person who is starting a new SaaS company, let's say like super early stage. They just achieved product market fit, and now they're testing a few marketing channels. It looks like the SEO has potential for them, and now they want to try it out seriously and allocate some budget to it. So they don't have a massive budget, let's say, but they can work with maybe one full-time writer, right? If you join this company, or let's say they consult with you, they work with you in some capacity, how would you build a solid content strategy for them, for a team that is relatively small, don't have a lot of money to spend? How would you advise them to still invest in SEO but still win?
Yeah, I think with early content teams, like the big worry for me is not doing enough. And so that one person is a potential risk. Like hiring there, thinking content will work, but we're only going to go halfway in or something. Doesn't mean it can't be done. So I definitely think that this is still a very common scenario and still something that should be answered. But I think just to put that up front of like, I think a lot of teams think we hire one person, they publish their 2 or 3 blogs a week, we'll see enough. Like you won't see the ROI because you won't have the content velocity that you need.
Mm,
So that would be my risk here. And so what I'd do to overcome that is definitely hire somebody, this one person. Um, I would want to really increase our velocity here. So there's 2 ways of doing that. Like at Scribe, it was very much using freelancers, contractors, right? Not that we want to underpay people, but generally we could pay a lot less than if we're paying an agency. We're paying for the operations, we're paying for the branding, we're paying for all their sales team and everything. Whereas a freelancer is their single person, maybe they're running a small team or something. But we again could bring that price per blog down to about 20% of what we were paying a top-notch agency. That's one way. And then if you're hiring a full-time person or whatever, you can still do a lot of this, but I would, 2 or 3 blogs a week. I would want them using AI. I would want them certainly to have the skills and know SEO optimization and to understand how to rework what's coming out of AI because we know it's not perfect and there's issues there. But somebody who could leverage automation, be really diligent with process so we're not wasting time on a lot of back and forth or spending manual time. And then again, AI wherever possible. So it's like you need someone really operations driven to cut out as much fluff, not take on those assignments from like the CEO has a random idea. You need someone who's really focused and knows the strategy that can say, we have to use every hour of every week really impactfully or else this won't work. So I do all those things. I would definitely make sure that there's some link building going on, probably like swapping links or I don't know. There's some things we can come back to certainly. But then the other piece is like, I would really start down the funnel and go really long tail. I would do nothing with like, if I'm starting a new ActiveCampaign competitor, I would not touch what is email marketing or what is the CRM. I would do nothing like that. Anything honestly above like a 20 keyword difficulty, I would probably stay away from. And I would really work on those. You want that. You want some stuff that you have a chance of ranking for. You need to get to page 1 on something in your first quarter, and you won't do that on anything difficult. you don't really have the time for the links. You don't have the domain authority to swap links like I can here at ActiveCampaign. So you really just need like content that can rank because there's not enough competition and you're pretty good at optimizing. I think the last piece I would do is the 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 exact stage matters. Like when I started at Scribe and who we thought our customer was versus 6 months later when we actually had customers and could talk to them was a little bit different, right? So you need to this will evolve. But the more you can know about like why someone would use your product and reverse engineer that into content, the better. So the best thing we ever did at Scribe for generating the right topics was asking our customers. It was a product marketing survey. It was like, before Scribe, what did you use? And so they used, Word docs, they used this tool, they used this tool. So we said alternatives to this tool. And we wrote those pieces of blogs. And we said, what would you use if Scribe didn't exist? Kind of the same thing. What do you call Scribe? We were kind of creating a new category. We were like sitting in between a few categories. So literally the words that they were using, we wrote, what is this? How to write this type of document, all this. So we took the language that our customers were using, inverted that into, the kind of the phrases that people search for. And all those turned into a lot of really low difficulty terms, or even terms that didn't exist in Ahrefs or other tools, but we were still generating hundreds, if not like several hundred people a month, nobody else competing for it. And some of those were turning into our best converting pieces. So it's not just about getting traffic and getting things ranking, but you need stuff that's going to turn into a user of your tool as quickly as possible. So I'd really talk to as many people as possible, use their language, and invert those into topics.
Right. Because again, because you don't have a lot of content publishing velocity, you just want to make sure that all of the content that you do create, you get the most out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our first, couple clusters at Scribe, and again, I've definitely learned from this, but we thought that like employee onboarding was going to be a huge thing. We thought sales operations and people in those spaces did use Scribe for sure, but we made some assumptions on who was going to be our best user, and so we started writing like, I don't know, checklists for employee onboarding, all these things that were a couple stages away from using our product, and so we were getting traffic, but really very few people converting. And once we went really with like, people are calling Scribe a replacement for standard operating procedures or for job aids, or there were so many synonyms, like so many weird things that people called it we never would have thought of. Once we just start writing about that, suddenly our conversion rates are going from 1 or 2% to 4, 5, 10%. And so that same, even if we're getting a little bit less traffic because they're smaller terms, the volume of like true signups and people paying for the product went up dramatically. So just a much better
Right.
version. And then those keywords again were really low difficulty. So we got there faster, and then the traffic was more impactful.
Love this. So, and by the way, I love the fact that your answers are automatically syncing up with the sequence of questions that I have. So my next question was going to be about gathering insights from different departments to inform your content strategy. So this is something that I see, like even we talk about, and of course this is like a big SaaS world thing where, or maybe perhaps a standard marketing practice, that you should be talking to your customers in like in either a direct form or maybe an indirect format, right? So you could be conducting some interviews, or you could be sending surveys, etc. But at the same time, you can also collect insights from your sales team, your customer support team, your customer success team, etc. So maybe watching some calls and those kind of things. uh, what I think, like maybe, and I'm also maybe guilty of this, is that perhaps people don't share a really good framework as to how they can collect those insights and then you know turn that into a content strategy that is well structured. So when I think of this, my question is, would you say that a strategy should be already in place, and then someone say, okay, so like can we gather some questions from maybe sales team, what are the questions that my prospects are asking before converting, and shall I just like throw them into the content calendar? Or is it more like, let me just see what those questions are and then decide what the strategy should be? So like, does the strategy come first, or how does these two go together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think to the point, there's some like practical considerations. Again, if you think of my like Scribe, like I should know some of like who's using this or some problems that they're solving. I kind of was given some of this in my onboarding, but you also need to So you have a little bit to get started. And again, there's this like points on the board idea that you do need to go show that you're having an impact, that you're getting work done, even if you're working very hard, but there's nothing published or nothing's happening. There's like some risk. So I would want to be getting more of those insights and taking it as much as possible while still like knocking out some of those low hanging things that exist. There's going to be some content that you can write that's you have a pretty good idea that this will be successful. So you can get those in motion while you go take in those sales calls or go read through all the customer service tickets or whatever it is. And so, if you're a small company, I would try to do those both in tandem. But if it's a one or the other, I would definitely want to know, and this is like learning from my experiences, that I would want to know specifically what language that they're using first and then go create the strategy. Because I think we did waste a couple months of not all the content, but a decent chunk was less impactful than it could have been if we had just taken 2 more weeks to go read, talk, whatever, just really dedicate to it. I think I'm often the person that's trying to like go get those published and then go talk to this person once and do this. But I really focused and said, let's go learn everything for 1 week, a real true sprint, 40 hours. It's all about learning what our customers are saying. Oh my gosh, the notebook full of ideas for content that you can go back to your SEO tool, that you can go, double check against all this other stuff, order, create all of your content operations. Like I would just want to do that first, do it really dedicated. But then if you come into a bigger company like ActiveCampaign, a lot of content's already created, but there's also so much more of that like customer-based communications happening. I always should be talking to customers more, but there's like thousands and thousands of tickets and requests. There's an entire community. There's actually multiple communities. There's multiple places people are having conversations. So same thing, but I can do that much faster than at a startup just because it exists already. But you do then want to like operationalize. How do you get those tickets in front of you so you can scan or use like some sort of AI to sift through those? Can there's tools now that can analyze your gong calls for different patterns or keywords or whatever else. And so how can I get that fed to me? You want to just be looking through all of that stuff, but get it, not just look through it, but get a lot of those insights kind of surfaced automatically too. So different scales, but I would start there, then create the content strategy.
Right. So, and okay, so that makes sense. And would you say there are still some topics that are, for example, not like you don't need to always go through, customer, like for example, for ActiveCampaign, we know like email marketing would be relevant, right? So like, would you say if you're building a strategy, shall you just go with some foundational stuff first and then think of these other things? Or would you say start with these other things and then like, should it be the other way around?
Yeah, again, depends on the stage. If we're a brand new website, 30 domain authority, no blog or anything, like we could just start with the email marketing tool and what is email marketing. But again, there's the difficulty situation you'd be running up against. So I think if you're looking for that long tail stuff that competitors haven't done, you actually need to know like what differentiates you from someone else. So for Scribe, like we had a tool that nobody had created something exactly like that before. So people are like, creating SOPs, standard operating procedures, kind of sucks. There's a bunch of different ways that people wrote that or asked, how do I do this better or whatever? But people were feeling the pain of keeping SOPs up to date. It's really annoying. And then when Scribe happened, they're like, oh, this keeps my SOPs up to date. So we would just reverse engineer that. So finding those long tail questions that there was no competition for, you have to talk to somebody. I think often like product teams or just marketing companies like create a tool or a product or a feature and think people use it one way, but they either don't use it or adopt it at all, or they use it for different purposes. So it's like truly how people use it and talk about it in their language can help. But I think your point stands that there's some obvious stuff that you don't need to like have had that in a customer interview to know or to feel pretty solid about. But a lot of that will be more obvious, more saturated, more difficult, etc.
Got it. And then I think another post that I saw of yours on LinkedIn was when you were talking about how some companies have a lot of randomness in the way that they publish content and in the way that they think of their content strategy. And I think like one very particular example you gave, like of course in a humorous way, was that there are so many companies that just want to write a thought leadership blog post because their CEO went on a podcast and they just heard something, right? Like very random. So that makes total sense, and I can totally see how that could dilute a very strong SEO strategy. But that also sparks a question, which is how can thought leadership content actually fit into an SEO content strategy? Like, is there a place for thought leadership content within a strategy specifically focused on SEO as a channel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's not to pick on it because again, it feels very good, but people just throw around the word thought leadership, like the broader marketing and content world, and even just like SaaS. People all want thought leadership, but like what does that really mean, right? Like there's true thought leadership, somebody that's got a fresh, completely unique perspective, but actually has validity based on either their experience or some data they found or whatever else. And not it's not like one idea can only have one person, but you need to be the forerunner there, someone truly testing, being on the ground, knowing this stuff. That's really hard to find. And I think a lot of companies are like, we don't have a true voice or we don't have a true perspective. So their like instinct is we need to be thought leaders. Like, what does that mean? Where do you go? How do you position something and connect it back to the company and the product? And then how do you not just like have one blog post, but make this a mission? I think like Refine Labs and Chris Walker's like the ideal of how you can really do this. They said like demand generation as a practice is broken. It's actually two different things. It's demand creation, it's demand capture. People are doing all this. They've got a true perspective in the market and they go hammer that thing over and over. I work with someone now who worked at Refine Labs. I know how he's going to think about a lot of stuff. I've interviewed people, I've talked to people. I know exactly what they're going to say because Chris Walker said it and then they regurgitate that. That's like the ultimate in thought leadership. There's a lot of steps in between, but the average company just says, okay, we do our SEO content, we do our thought leadership. Like those aren't really divided, really. Like I think great thought leadership is something that's distributed differently, at least at the start, right? Like if it's a new idea and nobody's searching for it, I think that's something about like true, fresh thought leadership. But then within like even think of some of the SEO content we're talking about, what is an SOP or why? That like thought leadership on a different way to do this instead of keeping all this updated manually. There's actually better ways to do this. You can automate that. That's a new perspective. Maybe nobody's searching for that, but you can create something like that and insert those ideas into your SEO content. So I don't think that they're like one or the other. To me, I love doing organic driven stuff. People are already searching and then insert these ideas within. So if I'm Chris Walker in Refine Labs and they're talking about revenue operations right now, well, I would there's a reason they don't do a lot of SEO stuff, but like then if you're talking about revenue operations, you could do what is it, explain old ways of doing it, but then also position what new school, show that there's actually two versions, two different ways of thinking about it. This is where the old way breaks down, and this is how you should be thinking about it. You should be creating new products and whatever and testing those. And that's actually the role of new school, modern revenue operations. And so that's where you could have thought leadership within like a what is or how it works or whatever type of posts that are very traditional in SEO. But again, I think people just think we'll publish this, we'll put it on media, maybe we'll put it on our own blog, and this will work out. It's not like really thought leadership, right? And even saying our CEO is going to go publish once or 4 times a month or 3 times a week on LinkedIn, that's not like thought leadership necessarily, unless they have like a true perspective and then they can really validate that. And then people are engaging with it. So I don't know, I rambled again, but I think that there's like people just have this big idea of thought leadership gets you there. But if you don't have a unique perspective, you don't know how to get that perspective in front of a lot of people over and over and over again, thought leadership is like often a big waste of time.
That makes a lot of sense. I think the example of Chris Walker and Refine Labs is like a platinum example of thought leadership content and how to do it right. Um, would you say, and this is like my understanding, and by the way, like I'm not a thought leadership content guy, so like you let me know if you think this makes any sense. When I think of thought leadership content, to me it's like you think of what your customer needs, and then you also think of what are the narrative, your unique point of view that you want to put out, the messages that you want to throw out. And then wherever that intersection happens, where your customer are interested in something and you want to say something that is interesting, wherever that intersection happens, that's where thought leadership content would live. Would you say that that makes sense, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it. To add on to it, even again, it's like this unique perspective, but especially when it's backed by data or experience, right? Chris Walker saying like his story is so compelling because it's like I was at a company doing exactly this old school way. I did it this new way, and this is what happened. This is the metrics that moved, right? And that's the story. That's me saying like on LinkedIn, all these people are saying quality, quality, quality. I'm like, well, I published 100 blog posts without editing them, and it worked really freaking well. And that's how I can be this thought leader in like this really micro way of like, you think you need 4 levels of editing and you think you need to go to Canva and build a graphic, but I didn't do any of that. My content actually works a lot better than yours. So there's like that true data and experience, even if it's like qualitative or even if it's like kind of summarized or anecdotal, that's where it becomes really impactful. And then people saying like think of all those content managers trying to balance that. Okay, I'm being asked to do 12 blog posts a month, but if I do that, then I have to cut down on the quality a little bit. They're literally like weighing that. And so they're looking for someone to say, this is what I've done and here's the true results. I think of like email marketing and ActiveCampaign, and like Casey Hill has come here from Bunch, or oh, he's such a good thought leader in the email space, e-commerce space, he knows stuff. And he's like, if you go to HubSpot and you go do their like email marketing training, it's like so generic. It does teach you some of the basics, whatever, but it doesn't tell you like when you're getting down to like what is an abandoned cart email. The like e-commerce email marketer doesn't need to know that. They already know that. Or like, what should we be testing? It's like, okay, they need to know like benchmarks and what like how to test the subject lines. They need those like really nitty gritty details. So that's like a micro version. But if we were providing them with like true data and showing them these tests and all this results, like really building in public and providing that, that's something that like they're people don't have that elsewhere. So you're trying to answer things that they can't get anywhere else. That's the best thought leadership. And that can be done in tons of different ways, but that's where you want to be.
And then, by the way, it just came into my mind very randomly. I would really love your thoughts, although it's not like, in the lineup of the themes that we want to explore, but still, what do you think of, this whole narrative of dark social now, and, some of the things that Refine Labs folks, in fact, talk about. And by the way, like all of those are like smartest folks, of course. What are your thoughts on how they view SEO's channels, especially for SaaS companies, that it's either getting devalued or there are new channels popping up now with the rise of dark social? How do you see that overall?
Yeah, you can tell like that I know that well enough, right? I can talk Chris Walker stuff. I think I'm honestly like a fairly big believer in what he's doing. I think I always was like, why are we bidding on our branded terms and a lot of stuff that really aligns. But I've also had a ton of success with SEO, which in general is like one of his pillars is like SEO is a big waste of money. When he started this company, it was a marketing agency, right? If I'm going to go compete SEO wise or even paid wise for terms like best marketing agency, there's just no way. The amount of money you have to spend to win an ad, to have the links, is just like such an uphill battle to like really be winning on the margins. And so instead of doing that, he literally said, that's the problem. I'm not going that direction. What way can I go around this? And so it's going to free channels to get exposed enough, and then to have a perspective that says, okay, there's 1,000, 10,000 marketing agencies in the world. But instead of saying, let's go evaluate, they just want to go to Refine Labs. It makes a ton of sense to have a perspective, to be different, to differentiate yourself in some way, and then get that message to as many people as possible. And so makes so much sense. For somebody like Scribe, we should also be doing that. We've actually had there are way more people who have found Scribe via TikTok, influencers, things like that, than found from SEO. But in SEO, we've made it work. We've made it an ROI positive channel. So this is like, we don't have to do one or the other. We found a space where there wasn't a category, but there was a lot of people asking about those type of problems. So there was really low difficulty keywords with decently high potential traffic. And so we found a sweet spot with SEO. We were able to turn them into users because though that's traditionally SEO's demand capture, no one had ever heard of Scribe, and we showed them with our product and great screenshots and really simple how-tos, like how to use this. We were turning people, we were creating demand via their search for something else. So we're kind of riding on the waves. And so I've heard him admit to a lot of those things, in different interviews and things, that there is value. It's just very case by case. If I'm a marketing agency, I would not work on SEO. If I'm in new space, even here, again, that's where I think focusing on long tail and not doing the old HubSpot model of getting big pillar pages and spending, months and months optimizing, building links, whatever, but going to find the green grass and the easier wins where you can cut down on the production time and the budget to make the ROI make more sense. That's the sweet spot. But very real here is that we don't know where a ton of our trials and customers come from, because we've made a product that people are really happy with, and they share that, or affiliates share that, or whatever. So a ton of people come in that look like they're direct, but they're really coming from other places. So dark social is a very real thing. You do need to do all those. but it's not a one or the other. A lot of these are complementary depending on your industry and your
Yeah,
search.
yeah. I totally agree. I think that's pretty much like you just summarized it really well. Perhaps it's not like, this one channel or the other. It's like a, sum of all of the touch points, because again, the kind of buyers that we're trying to attract, they don't have a linear journey towards conversion, right? Um, so bringing back the conversation to content, I wanted to get your thoughts on your process towards reoptimization. So companies that have large websites, content decay becomes a really big problem at a certain point, right? One thing that I've noticed working with some big companies and more mature SaaS companies is that you can't uh, you can't stop old content from decaying if your focus is to still be producing new content all the time. So, in my observation, at one point, it looks like the velocity with which the site is losing traffic on old content, it just takes over the velocity with which the website is gaining traffic on new content, right? And then when that takeover happens, the the traffic for the entire website starts to decay, because even if you're publishing a lot of content, it's just not catching up because there are just maybe 100 pages consistently losing traffic month over month. How has that ever been a problem for you? And then, like, I'm sure with ActiveCampaign, that is an issue that you consistently work on. How do you deal with that? Do you have a framework? What kind of model do you use?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of my stops, G2, even though it was a big website, when I was leading this content team, it was basically starting from scratch, from a pretty small blog to ramping that up. So I didn't go through that process as much before I left. Scribe, very much again starting at zero. We had just started to build those processes out when I left, and I know that for a fact that they're doing that now and doing it really well. But ActiveCampaign, very much. I'm coming in and the peak of our blog's traffic is still much higher than it is right now. And so we've turned this curve around, but it's been decaying for a year and a half, and they hadn't focused on that as much as just creating new, or maybe spending a lot of time on a couple pages, but not looking at it holistically. And so we've really tried to do this, like we've tried to turn this around very quickly. So I don't know if we have it fully systematically, but content starts at zero, it ramps up over time. Usually it's like a 3 to 12 month ramp up time to get to like kind of its peak on its natural progression. And then you've got another year, maybe two, before it starts to fall, but sometimes less, depends on lots of things. But we've got systems set up in like SEMrush and Ahrefs to indicate when something is dropping. I've used a tool like Let Her Drop It, Scribe, that shows that automatically. It can give you alerts when things have fallen. We're looking at Ahrefs for keyword, not just the traffic, but like our total keywords. When they start to plateau or even fall, that's a good indication that Google's kind of staled on something. So we're looking at that manually. We're setting up alerts to do that at scale. We're comparing month over month and quarter over quarter. But ultimately, like, to simplify, I would want someone working on that all the time, unless I was starting very much from one right now. Like on our team, we've got 3 people creating English organic content at all times. One person's focused exclusively on that optimization. 2 are focused more or less on creating new, though it comes and goes depending on how things are decaying and stuff. But we're kind of breaking it down to like 2 new, 1 optimize. We'll change that over time, but we're really focusing on turning some stuff around, cleaning things up, all those, just like all the interlinking and stuff that falls out. But you have to have that, Scribe, even after a year, was doing that. And even if you're not losing SEO rankings, there's so much on the optimization side for conversion that you should be doing right away. One of our best blog posts at Scribe was like turning people into paid users every month. I was like scared to touch it. We started doing some experimentation on it and actually like doubled the revenue within like a month or two, just of some experiments. And so that matters a ton. If you can find those really high velocity pages and know what to test for, you should be optimizing in that way too. It's not, I think the job of like a blog or a piece of content like that is never done. So a little bit of
Right.
always optimizing.
Yeah. So you mentioned in your team currently you have one resource dedicated towards
Mm-hmm.
reoptimization. So for them, is it like looking at the pages that are driving the most impact and then prioritizing those? Like, for example, with SEO, we know this 80/20 rule, right? So as you mentioned with Scribe, you worked on this one optimization and that like doubled the revenue coming from that piece. Is it like the same rule with this company, like ActiveCampaign?
Yeah, so there's way more content here starting off, but there's also a bunch of content that doesn't drive any revenue. It might drive a ton of traffic, but then that traffic is
Hmm.
very fluffy. It's very thin content, so or traffic. And so he's been working on, yeah, stuff that either ranked really well in the past or is on page two and never quite got there. But we often don't know because it got stuck on page two or something, or we didn't optimize for conversion. But based on my and his history and like the broader teams, but some terms that we already have published look like the types of things that will convert really well, right? They're really close to our product. They do solve problems. It's like, software lists or how to's, the type of stuff that like traditionally has a higher success rate. So we're making some assumptions, but we're optimizing those. So we want stuff that does have good volume, but also looks like a good converter. So we have like a blog that's like best traits of highly productive people. It's getting thousands of people a month, but nobody is ever going to convert to our tool from it. So great. That thing is like declining over time. Our traffic is actually kind of flat because we've stopped caring about those fluffy pieces, but we're actually improving our quality traffic on the other side. So our graph's like very flat, but we're actually seeing a bigger uplift in trials and revenue, despite being flat in traffic because we're just improving. So, and it's a very kind of a wonky case, but yeah, very focused on what's going to move the right needles.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, especially when you have like one resource dedicated towards your optimization. It totally makes sense not to work on every piece losing traffic, of course. Um, so, talking about link building, um, what has been your approach to link building in all these years? Since most of the companies you worked with already had a strong brand authority, domain authority, right? Like G2, Scribe, Scribe. I'm not sure how much when you started working with them, but broadly speaking, most of the companies that you worked with them, they had like strong domain authority, right? Did you still build links actively to fuel content's growth? And if yes, like what strategies did you invest in?
Yeah, the answer is definitely yes. So G2, good domain, but no blog. And so our blog took a bunch of time and getting specific links to specific pages and even just building it to that subdomain mattered a bunch early on. They matter less over time, but we needed to build them in that first 6 or 12 months until when we were publishing stuff started on page two. It's like, when we started as page four, then it's three, then two, and then eventually we were, ranking in the top five within a week because we built so many links to that domain and things. So it's even at G2 is like that. Here at ActiveCampaign, great domain authority, but we actually had a pretty slow site when I started. We had led a bunch of content decay. So we were sending Google really good signals, but also some kind of bad signals. So we needed to get some links back, like show some more positive stuff. Also, like, even though the domain authority is really good, we have 500 blogs. Some are competing against blogs that have built a ton of links. They might have a little bit lower domain authority, but they also have tons of links. So it's very much on a page by page, keyword by keyword basis. I got a post on LinkedIn from a year ago at Scribe, but I tried to just get like one or two links to every blog post and see what happened. And we saw like a big lift just by getting first and second links, showing Google like we're getting links spread around. And so I think people think link building, it's like, well, our homepage and our DR is really good, but you're still competing against people that are fighting at like that blog by blog level. And Scribe, we had a 34 domain authority when I came in, really not much. So we spent a lot of time and we were swapping links. It was definitely doing like scrappy things to get added to different directories and things to raise our domain authority. So I could swap links with better and better sites each month. So you have to do some of those things just to create like the optics of your domain authority so you can go get those really good links to the target pages you needed.
So would you say, like, even if it sounds like even if your brand has a strong domain authority and a lot of brand recognition, still you want to invest in link building, like pointing links to specific pages in order to
100%.
grow them?
100%. If you go to activecampaign.com/email marketing, we have a 90 domain authority, but we're facing HubSpot, we are facing MailChimp, we are facing all of these, right? They're building links to these pages. These are pages that the top 10 results all have hundreds and hundreds of backlinks. If we're not doing that, we're relying on our big domain authority, we are going to lose because we have others. At Scribe, we had a 34 domain authority. It's now 70 something, so it is much higher. But we were beating people with 90 domain authority because they weren't building links to specific pages, and we could build 5 links where they had 0. We could kind of overcome a little bit higher domain authority because we were getting links to that specific page. So your DR, I think, is what people look at first. But thinking about that like page rank and how many links are to a single page, that actually matters more in winning those SERPs, I found.
Right. And what if one argues that, like what about passive link earning? Would you say that it outpaces active link building in somehow? Like if you create content and try to just track those links, like passively with
Yeah.
your content.
Yeah, you want to do that, of course, but like nobody's linking to our what is email marketing page without us asking. Nobody does it. Just
Hmm.
and if you're not first, like HubSpot being first and HubSpot having the biggest brand in content marketing, they'll win that, but nobody else is getting those passives. So you need to do actively build on top of that. There are some brands I think can say that. There are certainly some pages that will passively build. Like at G2, we built customer review statistics that has like 1,500 referring domains. Of course, that thing we can go let run, but those links do help a little bit to all of our other blogs. But isn't those other blogs are still fighting their own battles on their own SERPs, and so those blogs aren't generating a ton. So you can do things. You can add customer quotes or stats or whatever within. You can rank number one, but still like a ton of SERPs and a ton of keywords won't ever generate many passive links. And so the only way to like edge somebody else out is those links. And I think with more and more AI content, people have the same ish content. Links are actually a bigger differentiator than ever before because people can't fake that with AI.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So most of the SEO industry isn't a big fan of the link building email pitches that they receive, right, in their inbox. Neither am I, to be honest. And just like everyone else, I typically ignore most of these emails. But you mentioned something really interesting on LinkedIn. I think you talked about how you use the same email pitches that you get, you vet through them, and you find really good opportunities sometimes for some link exchanges, right? How has that worked out for you, and how do you find those opportunities, especially because there is so much spam?
Yeah, it's annoying. I will start there. My LinkedIn DMs, I literally just turned those off this morning because I was getting so many follow-ups that I was like, I'm just getting frustrated by this. Same thing with my Slacks. I've like turned it off to some extent just to like save myself because I found myself getting very annoyed. However, if you are willing to sift through the annoyance, you can go find people that become awesome link partners that can do this specific link building that I've just called out with you over and over and over and makes the process of finding one link for that page right when you need it very simple. So what I do, people email, hi sir, I want to post on your site. Okay, well, this is not going to go well, right? But I say we don't accept guest posts, we'll do link exchanges. I've cut out anything else, but I basically just say that. And so if you want to exchange guest posts, if that's your plan, go for it. There's other ways of doing this. Maybe they offer paid services, but for me, I'll exchange if it's a good site. Otherwise, I don't care. It's not worth my time to say we'll do this. They'll either say no thanks, or they say here's our sites or whatever. Often they'll send you here's my 10 sites. They're all bad, so I say no thanks. Those aren't bad, good enough. Then they'll send me their better sites, and then they'll send me their best sites. They usually have like 400 sites. They're all working for the same 10 companies, but once I like cut through a couple of those emails, and there's ways to like speed that process up and just say I need this, minimum domain and authority and this much traffic, then they will send it. I found tons of people. I'd have to go to it. I built a few hundred links in the first 6 months, and I do this with about 5% of my time. I mostly do this while I watch TV at night. These are, SaaS links, 70 plus domain authority, traffic to the individual blog, insertions to the specific keywords I need, to the pages I need them to. We can definitely point to specific links that have instantly moved our rankings, like within 48 hours. And so there's tons of other ways to do that. We take in those. I go to different Slack groups, and I used to spend more time in them, but now I've just have enough relationships. I don't need to find new people, but I would do the same thing there. There's big link building communities that you can generate tons of great relationships. And then once you find someone, like if you're my awesome link builder, we've done one, we'll do links usually every month until one of
Mhm.
us leaves our company. And so not only did you find one link, but you might have found 10 or 20. And so you just need to find those good ones. Yeah, sift through. It's probably about 25% success rate. Don't waste your time. If someone's annoying, just delete it and move on. But when you find them, like then double down on those people and work with them over and over and over.
Yeah, I think like for most of the link building agencies that are actually working with legit companies, they really benefit with this approach, right? Because they if they actually have quality sites, like actual companies for which they're doing link building, they can easily give you some really good opportunities by exchanging links, right? Well, I think like another thing would be for you to sit tight, because if you keep revealing the strategy on all of the podcasts, your emails will double. The link pitches that
They
you're getting.
every time I mention it on LinkedIn or something, I definitely get tons more pitches in my email. My DMs fill up. The number of LinkedIn requests I get every day is very high, and it's mostly from link builders. So it is, it's a lot. I have been cutting it back, but it's been honestly one of the key drivers at Scribe and ActiveCampaign. And so people are scared of it. People think link building is not worth it. People think exchanging links is scary. And honestly, I'm happy that they do because I can take advantage of it.
I have two more questions, two more themes to jump into. And since we're already over time, just wanted to check, is it good to
Yeah, you're
go?
good.
Can we go?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So there are two different things that I would just wanted to talk about. One is programmatic SEO. The other one is the AI writing content creation and its possible threats to content folks. So starting with programmatic SEO, we at Flying Cat Marketing, as an agency, we talk a lot about programmatic SEO. We offer its service, and although some folks criticize the use case, I think when done right, it can be a really big lever, right? A really big growth lever. Now, I know that most of the companies you've worked with had some form of a utility with programmatic SEO, right? Like, let it be G2, Scribe, or not sure at ActiveCampaign though, but I'm assuming there would be something that you might be planning or thinking about, etc. How do you personally see programmatic SEO? Do you feel like programmatic content creation has legitimate use cases, like even in 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's all about with all content. Like one of these rules is like the content just has to provide value, and the person on the other end doesn't necessarily care if it's written by a content writer, it's written by the AI tool, or it's created via spreadsheets and some code, which is the simplified version of what programmatic SEO is. They really just want the answer, and they want a good answer. They want, like, you have a problem right now. That's why you search something in Google, and that's why you're on this page trying to do something. So there's a bunch of use cases that are really obvious. I think I'm probably not aware of all of them, and I think that there will be more that emerge. But something like templates, something like that people just want the template as long as it's created. They don't care so much about the landing page copy. That's oversimplifying, but there's things like that you can spin up long tail versions of the same kind of page with a few different variations to target keywords that nobody else is targeting, to get people where they're searching and meet them. So I've seen a lot of companies do that really well. Had some conversations there. When I think of G2 and people, to take a half step back, people are scared of like duplicate content, like on the SEO side. If we create pages that are really close, we're going to get penalized. I hear you. Like, working at G2 opened my eyes to that. And the average product profile, the average category page, alternatives page comparisons, they are 70+% the same content. All those templates exist. And it's just like the largest scale programmatic SEO possible, right? It's all this data in some backends and databases being pulled into specific spots and then formatted via, HTML and all that stuff. And so it's just a big programmatic content website, really, when you think of its core products. And so Google, we would have so many duplicate content warnings in Google Search Console, and yet be number one for all those terms, and those pages were ranking well. We're getting all that traffic. So Google very much showed us, like, as long as this content's valuable, it doesn't matter that this is largely duplicated. So I've taken that and pushed those limits and never really had big issues with it. At Scribe, we definitely have some like landing pages for like the term generator, SOP generator, and some other things where it comes pretty similar. Same thing with templates. They're still experimenting on like how to utilize that. But I've talked to a lot of folks in this like PLG content space that use programmatic for long tail stuff, like looking at, say, Canva, and they have new business card templates, but they also have like gardening or like lawn care business card templates. So they have a page for all that. It's basically the same page, just they've done their tags and created additional landing pages that are targeting different terms, right? So it ends up working out really well for them. Here at ActiveCampaign, we got a big marketplace, integrations, templates, etc. There's a lot of work to be done. I think what this looks like in a year here is much different than how it's been done, but they've done that with some pretty good success even to date.
Right. Really interesting that you talked about duplicate content. This is like the biggest question that even I get asked so many times. Like, what about duplicate content though? Um, it, I totally love the fact that you mentioned about G2, because like, you mentioned how at one point Google is saying, oh, this could be a possible threat for you, like in Google Search Console. On the other hand, Google itself is still rewarding you, like its algorithm is still rewarding you, which means that if it's off quality, it doesn't mean like the content overlap doesn't really matter that much. Perhaps the way I see this, and this is like the way I reply to people, is that just forget keyword cannibalization and the duplicate content. Think of search intent cannibalization. So if there are two different pages and they're like not providing any unique value, then of course they are cannibalizing, and then maybe there would be problem for duplicate content. But if even by just changing a few words on the page and you have a similar template to replicate, you're just like able to change the search intent in a way that they're now providing value that is unique, then perhaps it's fine. Like same thing you talked about Canva. I think they have, like, for every set of keywords, every single category, they have one template page where they share built up templates, and then a, a corresponding landing page, right? So people who want to start fresh and start from beginning rather than using a template. So like, wedding card templates and create wedding cards, etc. Like the keywords are the same, but search intent is different, right?
Yeah, I love your term of search intent cannibalization. I think that's perfectly said. Yeah, for them, they have just, I was just showing this in class the other day. They've got uh, event flyer templates. Huge term, probably hundreds of thousands of people a month, and they have that, but it's all their templates, right? But then somebody who's throwing a Halloween event flyer template, that's a different search. And so though all Halloween flyers fall under the bigger bucket, 98% of the other bucket doesn't fall under the Halloween, right? And so it is similar, but it's more specific intent. And so somebody is getting what they expect when they land on that page, and they're using probably tags or whatever it is in their system to create those programmatically and show the right content. So people are getting that value, right? It's all about that value on the other side. When they get there, are they finding what they want? And so programmatic lets you do really long tail stuff without a lot of effort once like it's stood up, but be more and more specific. I think that's where it's really valuable.
Awesome. So let's jump into the AI content writing part. And I, really want to frame this question in a different manner, because I think like all of the emotions attached with all of these AI content creation tools coming up, like the end emotion that every person is feeling, I think, are that, are they gonna end my job, right? Like that's the end level feeling, that what they're feeling at the in their core hearts. So my question to you would be, you are a content marketing leader, which means a big part of your job role would be to assemble and grow a content team, right? So when people talk about this expansion of AI content creation tools and the threat of writers getting replaced by these tools, um, what they're essentially saying is that content leaders like yourself might see no need to work with writers anymore, right? Like that's the essential argument. Like that's at the most fundamental level. So when people say AI will replace writers, you're the persona who's the decision maker in that context, right? Like you're the director of marketing. You're gonna make that decision one day if that ever happens, right? So when people say this is gonna happen, you're perhaps the persona going to decide whether it happens or not. So I want to ask you directly, as a content leader with years of experience, everything that you've done in the past, do you think these AI tools are at a place to possibly threaten the jobs and the roles of writers, like in 2023 and beyond, possibly?
I think to some extent they have, right? I think that there's two things going on too, but I, as I mentioned, connected to a ton of link builders, also connected to a ton of freelance contract type of writers. And I think things are harder for them today than they were a year ago. I think that that's fair to say at the macro level. Two sides are like the economy is tight right now, but also there's a ton of AI tools and people are using them. There's no doubt about that. Like there are people that are saying we, instead of spending $500 per blog post, we're spending about $2 or $10, whatever their tool costs. They're making typically some sacrifices to quality right now that they would get with, this being written and researched by a human versus AI. So there's some things there. There's definitely things with SEO optimization, interlinking that are missing. But in general, they can get 70, 80% of the content that they get from a writer for a lot less of the cost. And so to me, it's finding the balance as the content director. I want the speed and the efficiency and the budget of the AI, but I need that extra 20% because my competitors are only going, a lot of them will only do the AI. And so I need somebody who can use AI to get the best results, not just get exactly the same posts everyone else is doing, but really understand our market well enough, our product well enough, our customers well enough. What are the sections that are missing? What's the original research that we need to do? Whatever else. How can we use AI to write this or rewrite this or go fast, but then what human touches needed to be added? How do we go get, customer quotes or just expert quotes? How do we build the graphics that will show this off better than just text? Things like that. And so I think AI actually frees my team up to go very fast to publish the content, but now to create those next steps to add that extra value. And so we can create maybe 5 times more content, but we have 5 times more content with either the same quality, or we can create much deeper quality than we used to because we don't we just are freed up to do more because it's writing section. So we're using it in doses, but definitely I would never trust right now AI to do our entire content production side. We just will lose too much quality. Where that will be in 10 years, I don't know. I still assume that human touch will matter. It's so much about that strategy. So if I'm a writer, I'm a content manager or something, and I'm worried about this, you need to know how to use AI. You need to know how to wrangle it and turn that into strategy. You need to know how the rest of the business works. So not only can you create a blog post, that's table stakes now because you can create a blog post in 10 seconds. How do you optimize that? And how do you get that in an email to the right customer at the right time? How do you set up automations? How do you create that graphic? And how do you create that graphic really quickly? And what's the most compelling graphic? Then how do you reach out to all these people regularly so that way experts can add that thought leadership we talked about earlier? All of these things, you need to know how it all connects together. Simply writing a blog isn't enough, but also I don't know, journalists ran out of jobs 20 years ago and then they figured out how to do it differently. People you just have to evolve with the content. So content creation jobs will exist. They will look differently. They already are starting to. But if you're the person that can wrangle that, there's actually a ton of opportunity if you know how to do it. So,
Right. I think a common narrative, like the mainstream narrative from most of the people in content marketing, is that what they're worried about with these AI tools is that the overall quality of the content being published on the web will decline, right? Because everyone can content production will be commoditized totally. So, but it looks like what you're saying is that when done right with the right people using AI, it can it can actually enhance the quality of the content because now you have more time to collect the subject matter expertise, interview the folks that you want to collect insights from, etc. All of those different kind of things, right?
yeah, definitely. It's all about looking for the differentiators. If everyone's creating the same vanilla content at scale, sure, some people are going to be able to weaponize that and use that really well. But then you're looking for how do we do almost the same volume, but then add the depth so we're winning on the SERP, right? It's that's the difference. You're just looking for if everybody's doing one thing, how can you do most of that but add some other layer that differentiates? There's going to be a lot more content. There already is. There's a ton more. But that there's still going to if I'm thinking about email marketing, there's already 50 companies fighting for this. Maybe now there's 200 fighting for the same keyword, but there's still somebody still has to win. So you need to know what those little details are. It's all about that. I've talked about this with folks even before AI. I feel how does everyone not win in organic or stuff? And it's because we know these little tiny bits of code. We know how to optimize headers just slightly differently than the Moz blog tells everyone to do. Everyone has access to tons of guides on how to do good content right now. But it's the people who've done it for 10 years and gotten really scrappy and growth oriented that have figured out that little difference. It's already saturated. And so it's just gonna be the same thing, but you're gonna have to get even better and even better. And that's not that different than content marketing of the last 10 years. There's just more, but that just means you can do more if you're the person thinking this way. I don't know. People used to hire people to write blogs offshore for $1 or $5 each. There's tons of crappy content on the internet before. It's actually probably a little bit better than that content. So we just raised the bar a little bit on the minimum. So I don't know. It's not that different to me. It's just bigger.
Yeah.
it's just wider.
Yeah, there are a lot of unknowns in this. Um, do you like if you just like very randomly think? Do you think writers at one point might not even be needed? Like, for example, we might just need editors to edit what AI is giving us. Could we reach that stage?
To some extent, I think some companies will do that. I mean, we're in some ways doing that right now, like somebody
Hmm.
to create the brief and the outline and to make sure that AI is giving us the right stuff. But they're rewriting, they're working on voice. But AI is getting better and better at matching our voice and taking inputs from
Hmm.
us. So again, we're like our content people are becoming AI prompt content people as often as they are
Right.
writers. Um, but like we're creating landing pages, we're trying to talk about how to position ourselves against a different, like a big competitor, or how to position ourselves in a specific industry, like problems we're dealing with right now. AI can't do that. That creativity, that like pattern matching to how other people in other industries are using content, like AI can do some of that, but not all. And that's where like your humanness, your creativity can still really matter, even if like the bulk of your base content creation can be done from AI. So I don't think it'll ever get exclusively there, but you're right that some parts of content will be largely replicated by AI pretty well.
Hmm. Right. Well, this has been amazing, Jacob. Thank you so much for your time. How can people find you?
Yeah, again, thanks for having me. This has been awesome. Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place. I'll chat with anybody. I know I just said I turned off the notifications on my phone, but I still see them on desktop. I'm still on there pretty much every day. So yeah, I post on there. I like to answer in comments, but I generally answer DMs when I get them too. Love connecting with people in person or on LinkedIn. So I would love to chat with people there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I think this is a wrap.